What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And let me just address a few things. I'm seeing a lot of comments on my last video. For those that ain't caught it, I suggest you go check it out. But basically, you all know about there was a Crip, right, a black dude who booked a Mexican Mafia member in High Desert quite a while back. Some weeks ago, months ago, in fact, that dude, maybe a month, that dude showed up in Salinas Valley. And the Southsiders got it to blacks. Hey, deal with that guy. They said no. And it's been as it is until last night when the Southsiders move on that black dude, right, that Crip, and others in a couple day rooms on the yard. And things are probably going to escalate further if we're just keeping it real, although I don't know for sure how it plays out. So, look, there's a lot of comments about, oh, it's Raza sticking together. It's all about Raza, and Rascal's like, oh, Acto, he don't care, and all this other stuff. Look, if it's all about Raza sticking together, where's the Bulldogs? Are they not Raza? How come they're not welcomed into the fold? What about all the brown people who aren't chomos and are not rats? They don't got funny charges, but for whatever reason, they're not in favor of one of these major organizations, right? The NF or the MA has said, nah, they're not cool anymore. We don't like them, right? So what about them, right? Are they not Raza? How come brown pride doesn't apply to them? Because they're going to get whacked. They come on the yard if we keeping it a buck. This is not about brown pride, bro. Like, listen, you're falling for the okey doke. This is about a Mexican Mafia member's ego. This dude disrespected this Africano. Whether he was an Africano, a Wood, a Chino, whatever, he disrespected another man. A man that's been in prison 40 plus years. Not some young gangbanging stereotypical dude, right? He's not hyphy. He disrespected him multiple times. The dude had enough. He poked him. Oh well, it happens. You don't get to act any old way you want to towards any old person you want to in the Department of Corrections. Some people gonna call your bluff. That dude doesn't like it because he's Mexican Mafia. Wow. He sat in shoe for all these years. Wow. Get out of here. You got out of line and you got checked. Period. That dude's got a DA referral. That dude's going to court. He's going to get more time. Like, it is what it is. And I get it that if the Southsiders got to jump because that's their big homie, then that's fine. That's their issue, right? But ain't no Mexican Mafia member a Nortenos big homie, brown or not. I don't give a fuck who you are. That's not how it works, bro. It hasn't ever. And if it works that way now, things are weird. This is not a race issue. The blacks didn't turn around and be like, oh, it's a green light on everybody. This is not a racial issue. This is an issue where one individual stepped out of line so many times that another individual who happens to be black felt like they needed to put that person back in line, at least when it comes to them. And they did. Chalk it up for what it is, right? See, I remember a time in prison where if a member of a group segment got out of line with your homeboy, you got at them and they dealt with it. And the same was true in reverse, right? I've seen Northerners removed off the yard, hands on, no weapons. But I've seen Northerners get hands and feet put on them by other Northerners because they disrespected a Southsider. And that's when the Southsiders did not have numbers on that particular yard, right? It wasn't a fear thing. It was a respect issue. I've seen Southsiders remove their own people, hands on, no weapon, because they disrespected a Northerner, right? So everybody now, it's brown pride, it's brown pride, it's brown pride. I'm all for brown pride. I'm all for the actual foot soldiers, the actual workers, the actual people who have sacrificed over the course of the last several decades in the California Department of Corrections to make that space safe for them and their homeboys, whether you're from up north or down south. I'm all for those people deciding, look, Holmes, if it's not about race, then we're not interested. We will rock together. I'm not beefing with you because you're another brown man. Even though you're from somewhere different than I'm from, I'm not going to fight you over that. I'm not going to be at war with you over that because you're from, the South and I'm from the North, or I'm from the South and you're from the North, whatever it may be. I'm not going to do that. We're going to rock together, right? And put our arm out for the biceps too, right? Of course. That makes a lot of sense to me. I love that. This is not a brown issue. This is one man who got out of line and got put back in line, and his ego's bruised because according to them, they're untouchable. They go, oh, you're like these mysterious gods. Nah, bro. For what? Because you sat in a suit validated for hell years? So that all of a sudden makes it where nobody could offend you, yet you can offend whoever you want to and face no consequences? That ain't real life, homie. That's not how it works. And again, I understand the South got to jump for this dude. I get it. Like that's your dude, right? But if the North gets involved, a lot of people seem to have drank the Kool-Aid of like it's a brown issue. It's brown against black. It's not brown against black. Black people have not declared war on brown people. The Crips have not declared war on the Southsiders. Like, nobody has declared a war. One person had an issue with one person. And I get that they're people of different races. And I get that those two groups, Southsiders and blacks, have a long history of tension. So maybe it escalates between them. Northerners and blacks do not have a long history of tension. Quite the opposite. So why does the North jump? That's my only thing. And as of this moment, they haven't. Right? But the hypothetical I presented is that issue. If the North jumps because a Mexican Mafia member got stabbed by a black dude, and you jump into a racial issue, the Southsiders rushed the Africanos in Salinas Valley. They made that move. That dude been on the yard, right? I'm honestly surprised it took them that long to bust the move. But regardless, they did what they felt they had to do. That's fine. That's your group segment. I don't understand and I don't agree with, for whatever that's worth, right? The idea that this group segment inherits this group segment's beef because these two groups are the same race and their leaders get along. Especially when one of those group segments, the North, was raised to believe that the Mexican Mafia was the devil. Let's not forget that. And I'm not saying I view them that way now, right? I'm 46 years old. It's different. But for those homeboys that are on the yard, right? And I say that loosely because if I put up on the yard in Salinas Valley, my homeboys would probably bust a move on me. Not probably, they would. Because of me being on YouTube, right? And because of some of the people I talk to. But that's the joys of freedom. I really don't care. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to try to help you move in excellence, right? In my own way. This is not a brown issue. These organizations want you to think it's a brown issue. Our entire existence, according to the NF, is predicated on the threat of the Mexican Mafia. That's just what it is. And I know folks from down south don't really get it. Because folks from down south don't really give two shits about the North. If we're going to keep it real, like, you guys don't sit back and talk about Northerners. You guys don't sit back and talk about the NF. You guys don't do that because it's a non-factor down there. It's not a part of your lives. But up north, we have those conversations, right? When we're in prison, we learn what do you do when you go to a yard that's all Southsiders, where they're going to make you put your shirt on and they're going to take part of your canteen. They're going to do all this stuff. I don't think Southsiders get taught that stuff because I don't think Southsiders ever risk going to a yard that had zero Southsiders on it, right? I think San Quentin Reception was the first time that there was ever a place where it was on site with Southsiders. And that issue, North and South, the foot soldiers, the manpower, I love that that is in a different place. I love that that's not the case. The Mexican Mafia is a different story, okay? And I'm not anti-Mexican Mafia. I'm just saying, as a Northerner, to go to war with blacks because a Mexican Mafia member was offended is insane to me. This is not about brown issues. This is not somebody targeting the brown population. This is not all raza has to stand up and defend one another. This is two dudes that got into it, and one group of people who got to kind of back his play because he's one of them dudes for their side. And that is where I think the line is drawn of your side and this side. I don't even want to say my side, but these two sides are not the same. We as individuals, frontline folks, okay, and we have a mutual understanding, we have mutual respect. We actually don't have a beef. You just grew up in a different half of the state than me, right? There's that's nothing to shed blood over. We don't have no fun. We don't have no problems. It is what it is, right? There's no reason for us to be at war. So I'm all for North and South not beefing. But for this organization, and the only way the North jumps is if the NF says. And I'll be damned, boy. It's a whole new world the day the NF has the North jump in defense of the MA. Like, just sit on that for a moment and tell me it makes sense to you. And if you're not from California, I'm sure some of this is kind of like, it doesn't really make sense. It's all raza, this and that. And I get that. But if you're from here, you've got to hear me on this. And if you don't agree, if you actually hear what I'm saying and you don't agree, drop a comment and let me know what has changed. Like, let me know how this makes sense to you. This is not, oh, I just looked up and I saw a bunch of black dudes on some brown dudes and I'm a brown dude, so I jumped to their defense. This is not that, right? I get that situation. People are mentioning the one in Salinas, the other one in Salinas Valley, where, you know, the black dude from the Bay came out, took off on a Northerner. Another black dude jumped in to defend the Northerner, but it became to look like a black versus brown thing. So a bunch of blacks jumped in, some Pisces jumped in, some Southsider jumped in. Like, that I understand. You just look up and all of a sudden it appears there's black and brown around you. Well, if you're black or if you're brown, you jump in defense of your own. Of course that makes sense. And it's beautiful that you don't stop and think for a raza. It's great that you're not like, but is that a Southsider or is that a Northerner? I don't know. That changes things. I love it that the gente has gotten to a place to where it doesn't matter, homie. All these black dudes was coming just rushing brown dudes. So I don't know what's going on. They don't know what's going on. We just do our thing. I get that. And shout out to the brothers, to the blacks that jumped in, not knowing what was going on, just seeing black versus brown. There was a time in prison that wouldn't have happened. Because there was a time in prison that North and South was divided. So you would know right away. There was no such thing as black versus brown. Right? It was Northerners and blacks, or Southerners and blacks, but not brown and blacks. And I do love that that's changed, not in the sense of being against the blacks, but just in general. I love that that's changed where folks are not seeing geography as the divide, and they're seeing that ethnic pride. I get that. This is not that situation. This is not just some surprise. These are Southsiders defending the ego of a Mexican Mafia member. And I don't fault them for that. They do what they got to do, right? And I wouldn't necessarily fault the Northerners if they wind up jumping in because you're just doing what you got to do. But you can't look at me if you're from Northern California with a straight face and tell me that feels right. I don't give a fuck who you are, how old you are, where you did your time at. There is no way that a Norteño can watch this and tell me, yeah, man, it feels good to go to war against the blacks because one of them stabbed a Mexican Mafia member. Get out of here. Just stop. Like, I'm not going to bite my tongue. I love to end the hostilities between North and South. I hate the influence these organizations have, bro. What are they doing for us? And I say that to you whether you're from North or South or even if you're out of state, but you claim North or South, which I think is weird. right? Just like I think it's weird if you're from Northern California, you claim to be a Southsider. Like, it's just weird. Just claim where you're from. That's all. But nonetheless, I love that, right? I love that getting along. But these organizations have toxic influence. Period. And because I'm not in prison and I don't have to deal with these dudes being in the cell block with me, because I don't have to take the risk that Lil Rascal took or Isaac took or any countless of the other people took. Of like, oh man, I gotta be on my P's and Q's, otherwise the big homies might send one of my homies to come cut my throat. Like, I don't have to worry about that, right? So I'm going to say what I think should be common sense. Really. And I understand if there's people that are like, man, I can't leave a comment supporting this. What if somebody sees it? I get it. But if you really hear me and you see what I'm saying for what it is, which is not all Rascals from the North and he's cuddling up to the blacks and he's not with brown pride and this and that, that's some juvenile thinking. And you're intentionally missing the point to line up with some other line of thinking that I say doesn't make sense. So no, I'm all for Raza supporting Raza, 100%. I've really worked towards that. I've dedicated my life towards that in ways far beyond fucking YouTube and prison. Okay, so don't come challenging my credentials, homie. It's a fool's game. I'll embarrass you. I haven't done the most. I haven't done enough. But to suggest that I haven't been in this fight, you're crazy. Okay? But I think a lot of people are just kind of glossing by. You're getting caught up in the propaganda. As somebody who was a student of propaganda and a teacher of propaganda and a proponent of propaganda, I caution you, use some critical thinking skills. Please, and I don't say that as a put down. I say that as somebody who didn't for a long time. Use some critical thinking skills. Brown pride is beautiful. Absolutely. Just like black love is beautiful. Like, it's not beautiful for just one group. It's beautiful for any group. Right? And shout out the Woods. You know, who are never really in a conversation, but shout out the Woods too. Rock with your people. But this is not a race issue. This is an ego issue. This is a group segment issue, if you will. Because North and South get along on the yard does not mean that North inherits all of South's conflicts and vice versa. I don't think so. We can get along just fine ourselves. And that's the thing is, if we're going to keep it real, if you've done time in prison, like on real functioning yards with Northerners and Southerners, right? Do you know that there was no quote-unquote big homies on those yards? There was no NF on those yards. There was no Mexican Mafia on those yards. And yet somehow, we were still able to have an open line of communication. We were still able to have respectful dialogue, right? And not just when the numbers were even. I've been on yards where the Northerners far outnumber the Southsiders. Well, I've been on one yard like that. And I was on a very active, very functioning, very violent yard where the Southsiders, but hundreds of Southsiders on the yard. Not even a dozen Northerners sometimes. That line of communication was open. That respect was there. That equality was there. Southsiders had a couple tables, Northerners had a couple tables. We didn't have enough people to fill our tables. They had more people than they could use to fill their tables. Wasn't nobody punking anybody. Everybody was respecting each other. We all had what we needed. You got half the handball wall with the Woods. We got half the handball wall with the blacks. That's how it worked. And we did that without the MA or the NF on the yard. Like, North and South knows how to do this. We know how to get along. We know how to coexist. And we know how to kick it off and go to war and try to kill each other too, don't get me wrong. But nobody wants that. I don't want that. I don't want North and South to get into it. I don't want the North to jump in defense of the blacks in this situation. Like, oh, well, the Southerners or Crips are getting into it, so the fellas got to go back up the blacks. No, of course not. not involved. And again, I'm only talking about hypotheticals, but based on the track record recently, based on things I've heard recently in terms of what policies are being implemented, based on the fact that you have NF members and Mexican Mafia members playing with each other's elbows on the yard, I think there's a very real risk that this becomes a racial issue. And that is a problem because it's not. It's an organization issue. And if you're Northern California, that's not your organization. That's not your big homie. That's not your problem. Why sacrifice? For them. Not for the South. This is not, again, but you gonna sacrifice for the Mexican Mafia? Get the fuck out of here. Anyways, man, I'm gone. I can't reply to all the comments. There's too many of them, and they all say the same thing. And so I'll just do this video and let you guys know. Take it for what it is.